Om Tyagishwaram Ramakrishnam Saradam Matrarupinim Vivekananda Mahacharyam Natva Vakshami Shruddhe Yogena Chittasya Padena Vacha Malam Sharirasya Cha Bhaishachena Yopakarottam Pravaram Muninam Patanjalim Pranjaliranatosmi. We have been discussing the topic of antarayas, the obstacles that come in the path of yoga. They can obstruct our spiritual progress of pranidhana or meditation, or they could also obstruct our day-to-day or spiritual practice which we undertake when we are not engaged in pranidhana. Because this, as we discussed, yoga is a full-time engagement kind of thing. Sometimes we meditate, at other times it doesn't mean we are severed from the path of yoga. The journey has to continue even when we are not meditating. So these obstacles obstruct both these practices. We discussed 6 of them earlier, and last class we discussed 3 very important ones, which is Sthana, Pramada, and Avirati. Sthana is listlessness, Pramada is inadvertence, and Avirati is lack of detachment towards enjoyment of the world, enjoyment of the sense objects. Inadvertence is when we fail to deploy the means that we have. We have time, we have the know-how, we know what to do to progress in the path of yoga, we have the means. But for whatever reason, we don't deploy those means, we don't undertake this practice of yoga. That is what is called this inadvertence or pramada. The other 2, Sthana, listlessness, and Avirati, all these 3, they kind of become cause of the other or become the result of the other. Because of listlessness, we become inadvertent, or because of inadvertence, we become listless. It's either way works. It's a group of dangers, so to say, one leading to other. Sthana is listlessness, as you say. So the mind, it's on its own kind of autopilot mode. It's just thinking of everything that it can think of. Sometimes it takes interest in absolutely useless matters. See, matters that are inconsequential to one's even physical, material life, or especially spiritual life. Suddenly mind develops interest. We emotionally invest in those pursuits or those happenings, and it's nothing but listlessness and inadvertence. There is no gain in those pursuits, but for whatever reason we engage in them, and then what will happen we'll see in the next sutra. But that's an obstacle. And Avirati we discussed in detail. There is rati, that is delight in the experience or enjoyment of the world. That is there for non-yogis, that is there in non-yogis. Those who are not spiritual aspirants, they have this delight in the pleasures of the world. But when one undertakes this path of yoga, one develops a sense of detachment, and that is called virati. Virati from the pursuit of the pleasures of the world. But again, due to inadvertence or due to our samskaras or whatever, one slips. That virati is lost, that detachment is lost, and that is called avirati, loss of detachment. One again finds delight in what one had once renounced or what one had withdrawn from. There is avirati. It could be temporary, it could be very temporary, but it is avirati. It is an obstacle. It is an obstacle. That's why it's called an obstacle. It hinders our progress on the path of yoga. So this avirati is another obstacle, temporary loss of that detachment towards pleasures of the world which one had developed. That is an obstacle. So these three, inadvertence, lack of detachment, and listlessness, these three together, they form a very formidable obstacle in the life of every spiritual aspirant. And the remedy, best remedy is watchfulness. We have to be watchful about what's happening in the mind. And we should also use discrimination and prudence as to where we invest our emotional energies. We should use prudence, whether it is going to be fruitful. What is it going to give to me in my spiritual life? These questions we have to ask ourselves whenever we find our interests straying from the path of yoga. So these are kind of distractions on the path of yoga. So those were the 9 antarayas that Patanjali spoke of. They started with vyadhi, that is disease and just listlessness, inadvertence, there is doubt, there is wrong conception, there is laziness, there is inability to achieve spiritual progress and inability to maintain spiritual progress. Like that, some 8, 9 he had listed. We have discussed these. And we also, then the next sutra, which we started in our last class, talks about the accompaniments, concomitants, and also symptoms, so to say, of these antarayas. Dukkha daurmanasya angame jayatva shvasa prashvasa vikshepa sahabhavaha. That was the sutra. Sahabhava means which appear along with, or their accompaniments, so sahabhavati, sahabhavaha. They come along with these antarayas. That's why they are called vikshepa sahabhavaha. These are 4, so to say. One is dukkha, that is pain, misery. Daurmanasya is dejection, despondency. Then there is angame jayatva, that is unsteadiness of the body. Unsteadiness of the body. And there is shvasa prashvasa, that is inhaling and exhaling, in one word, breathing. So these 4 are said to be concomitants, accompaniments, and also symptoms of these antarayas. I say symptoms because these exist when the antarayas exist. They also point to some of the obstacles. When there is disease, obviously there is pain. There is no doubt about it. Then what can we do with pain? So we can take care of disease to a great extent by adopting a healthy lifestyle. We can handle pain by taking recourse to whatever remedies are available in this world. Go to a doctor, find means, treat the disease. And finally, we should also know that some pain is inevitable in life. So we accept it. So acceptance is also a way of overcoming these antarayas. There are certain pains we can't avoid. They have to run their course and then they will go away. So taking recourse to healthy lifestyle, taking recourse to whatever available means to eradicate or get rid of the disease, and also patience, acceptance. That's how pain can be handled, basically. The second is daurmanasya, that is despondency, or a feeling of dejection. When the mind is dejected, obviously we cannot practice yoga. So that's why this becomes a vikshepa, an antaraya. But it has its causes. Why would one feel despondent? Now we should investigate into these, and many times we'll find that our dejection is due to wrong choices that we made in our life in the past few days, weeks, whatever. We invested our energies, our emotions in some useless activities, and we have got dejection as a result of that. Mainly it happens because of unfulfilled desires, unmet expectations, and all that. Dejection happens, depression happens because of unmet expectations. So we were inadvertent. We invested ourselves into matters which were not really meaningful, which were not consequential. So we invested in inconsequential matters, and we are met with unexpected results, and then that leads to Daurmanasya. Or we allowed ourselves, let the guard down, so to say. The avirati took over, and then that leads to dejection. We may have dejection because of Bhranti Darshana, the wrong idea. So we thought that we could progress in the spiritual path very fast, and then we find it is not an easy path. So that Bhranti, that wrong idea, that could lead to dejection. So for dejection there are many reasons, Daurmanasya. But it's an obstacle. We should, everyone feels it. When one is dejected, we feel. But the point is that we need to look at the causes, why we are feeling dejected. That doesn't happen in a day. See, there are stages and steps. First the dejection, then at that time we just don't know what hit us. Then we get to a stage where we accept it, and then we are in a position to investigate the causes of dejection, and then we can correct ourselves. So this is the second obstacle, so to say, and that is Daurmanasya, or second symptom of the antarayas, called Daurmanasya, dejection, depression, and all that. The third one is Angamejayatva, that is shaking of the body. When the mind is restless, obviously it reflects in the body. So body keeps on. Some people cannot sit in one place. They just can't sit in one place for a few minutes. They are so restless. They have to keep moving around. Then while meditation, again, Patanjali will tell later, Sthira Sukham Asana. The asana, our posture should be sthira. It is steady. Those who have seen Sri Ramakrishna or Swamiji, they say that when they were meditating or whatever in bhava, it looked as if we were looking at a statue. There's absolutely no movement in their body. So that absolute steadiness of the body is the result of concentration. And vice versa, when the mind is restless, it reflects on the body. Some people have the habit of moving some part of the body continuously. Even when they are sitting, they are not moving around. They are sitting in one place. There's some part of the body, even they may not be aware of it. Even we may not be aware of it. Some part of our body will be continuously moving. That's a sign of a restless mind. So this Angamejayatva, it is a sign of a restless mind. And that is the third one. And fourth one is Shvasa Prashvasa, that is breathing. Now, prima facie it appears strange. How can breathing be a sign or accompaniment of obstacles in the mind? Because even a person who has crossed over these obstacles will be breathing. He or she may be a perfect yogi, but he or she would be breathing. So how could breathing be a sign or accompaniment of obstacle? That person has crossed over all obstacles. So would that person stop breathing or what? So the commentators and others, they point out that here breathing means irregular breathing. Irregular breathing is accompaniment and sign of restless mind, of obstacles in the mind. We are not aware how we breathe actually. Most of the people are not aware of how our breathing is irregular. But that is a sign, as this Patanjali says. Irregular breathing is a sign and accompaniment of obstacles. These last two, that is unsteadiness of the mind and irregular breathing, we can use it, so to say, by reverse engineering to quiet the mind. So if we consciously stay steady, at least moving of the body, it will have effect on the mind. So also, if we consciously develop the habit of regular breathing, that will have an effect on our mind. Just as obstacles or the disturbances of the mind lead to irregular breathing, so also regular breathing will lead to quietening of the mind. And many of the modern these people, they also talk of breathing. So if we develop the habit of regular breathing, it will have a calming effect on the mind. And of course, breathing in a slightly different sense, breathing exercises Patanjali will talk of. That is different. This is not any pranayama and all that. That Patanjali will talk of. This is just regular breathing, regulated breathing. Be aware of our breathing and regulate it. That's all. There is no pranayama involved in this. But that will have an effect on quietening the mind. So these are the antarayas and their accompaniments and their symptoms. So Patanjali brings up this subject. It all started with how to attain samadhi. For that you need intensity. For that you need shraddha, smriti, virya and all that. The capital and the sincerity with which that capital is being used. You need all that. That will take us closer to the samadhi faster. And then he said, Ishvara pranidhanat va, or by seeking God's help through meditation on God. So surrendering to God, and more than that, seeking God's help. A prayerful meditation on God, on Ishvara. And then he said what is Ishvara and what is Pranidhana. And then finally he said the result of that Pranidhana was Antaraya Bhavascha, that is offsetting or removal of the obstacles. And that's how led to the subject of Antarayas, that is the obstacles. And then to the Vikshepa Sahabhavats, their accompaniments and their symptoms. So this was a purview or an overall view of how we reached this particular sutra. Now, as we saw, the short way of getting rid of all these obstacles is Ishvara Pranidhana. That is prayerful meditation, seeking help of God or Ishvara. That is Ishvara. But to be able to seek that help, we have to exert ourselves, and hence Patanjali lists these antarayas. And we also discussed how at our level, as a self-effort, we can try to tackle and overcome these obstacles. But finally, it is only the God's grace which can remove these obstacles. Patanjali himself will give one more way of how we can overcome these obstacles as a self-effort, as a part of self-effort. So the next sutra talks of that. Tat pratishedhartham ekatatvabhyasaha. That is the next sutra. Tat means all these antarayas. Pratishedhartham is to offset them, to remove them, to counter them. What one has to do? Ekatatvabhyasaha. Ekatatva abhyasaha. Abhyasa means practice. Practice of ekatattva. Tattva means principle. Eka means one. So practice of one principle will help in removing these obstacles. Tat pratishedhartham, in order to remove these antarayas and their accompaniments, ekatattva abhyasaha. practice, take to the practice of single principle. That is the exact translation. We need explanation. What is this Ekatattva Abhyasa? Its purpose is fixed now, to remove the obstacles. But what is this Ekatattva Abhyasa? About that, there are 2-3 explanations. One of the Swamijis explains it as what Sri Ramakrishna calls Ishtanishtha. It is devotion to one's own chosen ideal to the exclusion of other forms, other divine forms. That is what Ishtanishtha means. So our Guru has given us a mantra and pointed us our Ishta. We have chosen a particular form of God, a particular path that leads. Now we should be devoted only to that. It doesn't mean we should be dogmatic or hate others, other forms of God, or other paths of approaching God. It doesn't mean that. But there is no need for us to go around to various forms and methods. That is Ekatattva Abhyasa, according to this Swamiji. You hold on to your Ishtanishtha. Of course, Ishtanishtha has its own its own benefits. Sri Ramakrishna says, you dig 1 foot in the ground in 10 places, you don't get water. Instead, in the same place, you dig maybe 5 or 6 feet and you would have got water. So that's a simile he gives for Ishtanishtha. Our emotional investment, our emotional attachment to one form of God exclusively, that will give better results. You love your Ishta Devata and with all your heart, and don't distribute that love to 100 forms. It doesn't make us dogmatic. It just makes us focused. And as they say, you can worship all other forms of God as forms of your own Ishta Devata. That's also there. So we worship any deity and any form of God as another form of our own Ishta Devata. The love of our heart is only for our Ishta Devata. And Anjaneya was the classic example in our scriptures for this Ishtanishtha. So there is that Ekatattva Abhyasa, being devoted to one ideal, one spiritual ideal, being devoted to one's own Ishta. That is Ekatattva Abhyasa according to God. The other explanation of this Ekatattva Abhyasa is that meditating on a single principle. That single principle could be Ishvara or it could be the self, whichever. Meditating on that. Now we already talked of Pranidhana, Ishvara Pranidhana. Ishvara Pranidhana was meditating on Ishvara, prayerful meditation. In that, there are many thoughts in that Pranidhana. There is an attitude of prayer, attitude of seeking. Then there is thinking about various aspects of Ishvara, because Ishvara is Nitya Mukta, is pure, Shuddha, never tainted by kleshas, and never undergoes birth and all that. So there are different thoughts related to Ishvara in that Pranidhana. But this Ekatattva Abhyasa is not that. When all these thoughts coalesce into one thought, so Ekatattva Abhyasa, according to some, is not a collection of thoughts centering around one principle. It is a thought of one principle alone. That is Ekatattva Abhyasa. So there is this slight difference between Ekatattva Abhyasa and Ishvara Pranidhana. Ishvara Pranidhana, we have thoughts centering around Ishvara. But in Ekatattva Abhyasa, all these coalesce into a single thought of Ishvara. But the problem with this is that we are actually, the obstacles are hindering our pranidhana. They are hindering our spiritual practice. And the solution given is continue the practice. That's the bottom line basically. Ekatattva Abhyasa, if you interpret it to mean meditation on a single principle, it will mean this, that yes, there will be obstacles in spiritual practices. Don't give up. Continue your spiritual practice, and that practice itself will remove those obstacles. So that is the second way of interpreting it. There's one more we will see in next class. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.